Imagine knowing exactly what the right thing to do is, and at the same time, knowing that doing it could cost you your life. Not your comfort, not your reputation, your life. That moment when your chest tightens, your thoughts race, and every instinct inside you whispers that staying silent would be safer. Now imagine choosing obedience anyway. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is the reality Daniel faced, and it is where this story truly begins. What makes the story of Daniel in the lion's den so powerful is not the miracle alone. It is the process that leads to it. Daniel did not stumble into danger by accident. He walked into it through consistency, through years of faithful, quiet obedience that eventually collided with a system that could not tolerate integrity. Daniel was not living in his homeland. He was an exile, taken from Judah as a young man and placed inside a foreign empire with foreign gods, foreign laws, and foreign expectations. Everything around him communicated the same message: adapt or disappear, blend in or be broken. For many people, survival would have meant compromise. Daniel chose conviction. Even far from Jerusalem, Daniel refused to relocate his faith. God was not a cultural habit he left behind. God was the center of his identity. This decision shaped everything that followed: his discipline, his character, his reputation. Faith for Daniel was not emotional. It was structured. It was practiced. It was lived daily. Over time, Daniel distinguished himself within the government, not through manipulation, not through politics, but through excellence. He worked with clarity. He made wise decisions. He demonstrated a level of integrity so consistent that even his enemies had to admit it. Empires shifted. Kings changed. Daniel remained. This detail matters deeply. It shows that faithfulness to God does not remove a person from influence. Often it is what sustains influence across unstable systems. When the Medo-Persian Empire replaced Babylon, Daniel was already an older man, experienced, observant, trusted. King Darius quickly noticed that Daniel possessed an exceptional spirit, something rare, something dependable. Because of this, Daniel was elevated to a position of authority above many others. And that promotion is what triggered the conflict. Integrity has a way of exposing insecurity. When someone rises through honesty, it threatens those who climb through compromise. The other officials began watching Daniel closely, not to learn from him, but to destroy him. They searched for corruption, for negligence, for inconsistency, but they found nothing. No accusation could stand. And this is where the strategy shifts. When character cannot be attacked, conviction becomes the target. The officials reach a chilling conclusion. The only way to trap Daniel is through his faith. They approach the king with flattery and precision. They appeal to his ego, his authority, his desire for loyalty. They propose a decree that appears harmless on the surface. For 30 days, no one may pray to any god or man except the king. Anyone who disobeys will be thrown into the lion's den. The law is signed, sealed. According to Medo-Persian law, irreversible. 30 days. Just 30 days. For many people, this would feel manageable. Temporary silence, a short pause. But for Daniel, this was not about prayer as a ritual. It was about allegiance, about who had ultimate authority over his life. Modern studies in behavioral psychology confirm that when authority enforces unjust rules, most people comply, even when those rules violate personal values. Fear of punishment and desire for acceptance override conviction. Daniel now stands directly inside this psychological and spiritual pressure point. The question is no longer theoretical. It is personal. Will Daniel adjust his faith to survive, Or will he remain the same even if it leads to death? This moment sets the foundation for everything that follows. Because the lion's den is not the beginning of Daniel's test. The test begins the moment obedience becomes dangerous. And from here, the trap closes. The pressure intensifies, and Daniel's quiet consistency becomes a public crisis that will place him face to face with death itself. Once the decree is signed, everything appears calm on the surface. No alarms, no public outrage, no immediate confrontation. And that is precisely how the most effective traps function. They are quiet. They wait. They allow routine to continue while pressure builds underneath. The officials who design the law are not guessing what Daniel will do. They already know. His faith has never been hidden. His discipline has never changed with circumstances. He prays 3 times a day, consistently, faithfully, without secrecy. And so they watch, not with curiosity, but with intent. When they see Daniel kneeling in prayer, they feel satisfaction. Not because he broke a rule, but because he stayed true to who he was. And this exposes something deeply unsettling about human nature. Faithfulness itself becomes evidence when integrity threatens insecure systems. They do not confront Daniel. That would invite debate, explanation, defense. Instead, they approach the king, because power is easier to manipulate than truth. They remind Darius of his authority. They repeat the language of loyalty and unity. And then they deliver the accusation carefully. Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, does not regard you, O king, or the decree you signed. He continues to pray 3 times a day. Notice the framing. The issue is not religion. It is defiance. Daniel's obedience to God is presented as disrespect toward the throne. This is a strategy seen throughout history. Conviction is labeled rebellion when it refuses to bow to political pressure. The moment Darius hears this, the mood shifts. Scripture makes it clear that the king is deeply troubled. This is not indifference. This is regret. He values Daniel. He trusts him. He recognizes his integrity. But the king is now trapped by his own decision. For the remainder of the day, Darius searches desperately for a way out. He looks for legal loopholes. He delays execution. He attempts reinterpretation. This struggle reveals an uncomfortable truth. Not all injustice is born from cruelty. Some injustice survives because leaders lack the courage to reverse their own pride-driven decisions. As the sun begins to set, hope fades. According to Medo-Persian law, a royal decree cannot be revoked. The same authority that elevated Daniel now condemns him. 1. The king was condemned, and in this moment, Daniel is brought forward, not resisting, not pleading, not arguing. His silence is not weakness, it is trust. Before Daniel is taken to the lion's den, the king speaks words that are both hopeful and hollow. May your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. The statement is revealing. Darius believes in Daniel's God, but he is unwilling to align his authority with that belief. Recognition without obedience always falls short. Daniel is lowered into the lion's den. A stone is rolled into place. The entrance is sealed with the king's signet and the seals of his officials. There will be no interference. No late mercy, no quiet rescue. The lion's den is not merely a method of execution. It is psychological warfare. Darkness, isolation, predators trained to kill. Modern research into extreme stress shows that when humans perceive complete loss of control, the nervous system enters a state of collapse. Fear becomes overwhelming. Rational thought diminishes. Daniel enters this space fully aware that there is no human solution, no negotiation, no appeal, no escape. And this is where the tension of the story reaches a critical point. Because from this moment forward, the outcome depends entirely on divine intervention. Meanwhile, the king returns to his palace, but rest does not follow him. He refuses food. He rejects entertainment. Sleep escapes him. His conscience becomes louder than his authority. This contrast is striking. Daniel is physically imprisoned, yet inwardly steady. The king is free, yet mentally tormented. Psychological studies confirm that unresolved guilt activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Darius is experiencing the weight of his own decision. The law he signed to elevate himself has become a source of suffering. As the night deepens, silence settles over the city. No one knows what's happening inside the den. But the story is far from over, because when human power reaches its limit, the stage is set for something far greater. The stone that sealed Daniel inside the den does not seal God out. And while no one sees it yet, the turning point is already in motion. Night falls, and with it comes a kind of darkness that feels heavier than usual. This is not just the absence of light, it is the awareness of danger. Daniel is now alone inside the lion's den, surrounded by animals bred and trained to kill. Their presence is real. Their hunger is real. The threat is immediate. There is no exaggeration in saying that from a human perspective, survival is impossible. What is striking about this moment is not what Daniel does, but what the text does not describe. There is no record of screaming, no mention of panic, no desperate bargaining. This does not mean Daniel felt no fear. Fear is a natural human response, but fear did not control him. There is a profound difference between feeling fear and being ruled by it. Daniel had faced pressure before. He had navigated political danger. He had lived under hostile governments. But never before had the situation been this final. There is no strategy left to apply, no wisdom to negotiate, no influence to leverage. Everything that once defined Daniel's public strength has been stripped away. All that remains is faith. This moment reveals a critical truth. Faith is not truly tested when alternatives exist. It is tested when every alternative disappears. Daniel is not praying now to escape responsibility. He is standing on a lifetime of obedience that has already shaped his inner world. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the palace, King Darius remains awake. His authority has not brought him peace. He paces. He replays the events of the day. The image of the sealed stone haunts him. The contrast is powerful. Daniel facing death is inwardly steady. The king, surrounded by luxury, is restless and tormented. Modern neuroscience shows that anxiety increases when individuals experience moral conflict and loss of control. Darius is trapped inside both. He knows Daniel is innocent. He knows the decree was fueled by manipulation. Yet he cannot undo what he has done. His power has reached its limit. Inside the den, something extraordinary happens. Scripture states that God sends his angel and shuts the mouths of the lions. This detail matters deeply. The lions are not removed. The danger is not erased. The environment remains lethal, but its power is neutralized. This reveals a pattern in how God often works. Many expect divine intervention to remove the threat entirely, but sometimes God chooses to restrain the threat instead. The miracle is not escape from the situation, but protection within it. This requires a deeper level of trust because the danger remains visible and close. Daniel spends the entire night in that den. Hours pass. Each moment reinforces the reality that his life is sustained by something beyond human explanation. There is no guarantee of morning, no audible promise, only trust. Behavioral science confirms that in moments of extreme crisis, the human brain defaults to deeply ingrained habits. Daniel does not invent faith in the den. He relies on what has already been built through years of consistent devotion. Faith, when practiced daily, becomes a stabilizing force under pressure. The den, intended to be a place of terror, becomes a place of divine encounter. The same space designed for destruction becomes a sanctuary of protection. The lions, symbols of power and death, are rendered harmless not by human dominance, but by divine authority. As the night stretches on, silence reigns. No one outside knows what is happening. No celebration, no announcement, no evidence. And this is often the hardest part of faith, trusting God when there's no visible sign that anything is changing. But unseen does not mean inactive. God is working even when nothing appears to move. The silence of heaven is not the absence of care. It is often preparation for revelation. Eventually, the darkness begins to lift. The night gives way to the first hint of dawn. And with it comes a shift. The moment of private faith is about to become public testimony. Daniel has remained faithful through the longest night of his life, not knowing if it would end, not knowing if rescue would come. And that endurance becomes the foundation for what is about to unfold next. Because when morning arrives, the den will no longer represent death. It will become undeniable proof that no decree, no system, and no weapon formed against a faithful servant of God can succeed when divine authority intervenes. Morning arrives, and it comes with urgency. The sun has barely begun to rise when King Darius leaves his palace in haste. There is no procession, no royal ceremony, no display of power. The text makes it clear that he goes quickly, almost desperately, toward the lion's den. This alone tells us something important. Authority has failed him. Only hope remains. As he approaches the sealed entrance, fear and expectation collide. The stone is still in place. The seals are unbroken. Nothing appears to have changed. And in this moment, the king does something profoundly human. He calls out. His voice is not commanding. It's anxious. Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions? Every word of that question carries weight. The king does not say Daniel, criminal, or Daniel, rebel. He says servant of the living God. Even before seeing the outcome, Daniel's testimony has already shaped the king's understanding. Faith lived consistently speaks louder than any defense ever could. For a brief moment, there is silence. And silence, in moments like this, feels unbearable. Silence can confirm fear or prepare a miracle. No one breathes easily until a voice responds from within the den. Then Daniel speaks, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the mouths of the lions, and they have not harmed me, because I was found innocent before him. And also before you, O king, I have done no wrong." This response is remarkable. Daniel does not accuse. He does not demand justice. He does not express bitterness. He honors the king. He acknowledges God. He maintains integrity even after injustice. This reveals that Daniel's faith was not situational. It was foundational. Daniel is immediately lifted out of the den, and the text emphasizes something crucial. No wound is found on him. Not a scratch, not a bruise. This detail removes any attempt to explain the event away. The lions were fully capable of killing. The miracle was not luck, it was protection. The mood shifts instantly. What was meant to be a demonstration of punishment becomes undeniable evidence of divine power. The same system that tried to silence Daniel now exposes itself. The men who had maliciously accused Daniel are brought forward. Along with their families, they are thrown into the same den. The text states clearly that before they reached the bottom, the lions overpowered them. This confirms beyond doubt that the lions were not passive. The restraint applied to them during the night was supernatural and specific. This moment is sobering, but it carries an unmistakable message. Injustice may appear strategic, but it is ultimately self-destructive. Traps designed for the innocent often collapse on those who set them. The king is deeply affected. He does not quietly move on. He responds publicly. Darius issues a new decree, not elevating himself, but honoring the God of Daniel. He commands that all people in his kingdom fear and reverence the living God. He declares that God's kingdom will never be destroyed and his dominion will endure forever. This is a complete reversal. A law once designed to restrict worship now mandates respect for God. A king who sought loyalty now submits to divine authority. This shift did not happen through rebellion or protest. It happened through unwavering integrity. Daniel continues to prosper under the reign of Darius and later under Cyrus. This detail matters. His story does not end with survival. It continues with stability, influence, and honor. Faithfulness did not remove him from leadership. It preserved him within it. This part of the story reveals something critical. God does not merely rescue in private. He vindicates publicly. He transforms shame into testimony and accusation into evidence of truth. But the story is not complete yet, because while the miracle is extraordinary, its purpose reaches beyond Daniel's lifetime. The meaning of this event stretches forward, challenging every generation that reads it. The lion's den was never just about lions. It was about authority, about allegiance, about whether faith can remain unshaken when power demands compromise. And now, with the miracle revealed and the system reversed, the question shifts from what God did for Daniel to what this story demands from us. After the miracle, after the public deliverance, after the decree is reversed and Daniel's life is preserved, the story could easily end. Many stories would stop right there, satisfied with the spectacle of divine power. But the truth is that the miracle is not the final message. It is the doorway to it. Because the story of Daniel in the lion's den was not preserved for centuries just to impress us. It was preserved to confront us. Most people listening to this story will never face a literal lion's den. No stone will be rolled in front of them. No wild animals will surround them in the dark. But almost everyone will face a moment where obedience becomes costly, where faith becomes inconvenient, where integrity feels dangerous. Those moments are our dens. A den can look like a workplace where cutting corners is expected and honesty makes you stand out in the worst way. It can be a relationship where staying true to your values risks rejection. It can be a culture that pressures you to stay quiet about what you believe in order to be accepted. The form changes, but the pressure is the same. Compromise and stay safe, or remain faithful and face the consequences. Daniel teaches us something deeply uncomfortable. He did not obey God because he was sure God would rescue him. He obeyed God because he was sure of who God was. That distinction changes everything. Faith that depends on guaranteed outcomes is fragile. Faith rooted in character remains firm, even when the outcome is unknown. Notice something crucial. God did not prevent Daniel from being arrested. God did not stop the decree from being signed. God did not block the path to the den. This challenges a very common assumption. We often believe that if we are doing the right thing, God will remove all danger. But the story of Daniel shows something different. God allowed the situation to reach its extreme point. He allowed injustice to appear victorious, and only then did he act. This teaches us that God's presence does not mean the absence of hardship. It means his presence within it. protection does not always look like escape. Sometimes it looks like peace where fear should dominate, strength where collapse should occur, life where death seems inevitable. Psychological research on resilience consistently shows that people who possess a strong sense of meaning endure extreme situations more effectively. Daniel's faith gave meaning to his suffering. The den was not chaos to him. It was a place where his loyalty was tested and proven. Another powerful detail is how Daniel emerged from the den. He did not come out angry. He did not seek revenge. He did not allow injustice to harden his heart. The same integrity that defined his life before the den defined him after it. This reveals something essential. Trials do not just test our faith, they test our character. And the real victory is not only surviving the trial, but remaining who we were meant to be through it. Daniel's faithfulness did more than save his life. It transformed an entire system. A king was changed. A nation heard about the living God. A decree meant to suppress faith became a proclamation of God's power. This reminds us that personal obedience often has public consequences we cannot see in advance. Many people underestimate the reach of their choices. They assume their faith only affects them. Daniel's story proves otherwise. One consistent life can influence leadership, culture, and history without shouting, protesting, or demanding recognition. Daniel prospered after the den. This is not a minor detail. His story did not end in survival mode. It continued in influence and stability. This does not mean every faithful person will experience visible success, but it does mean that God does not abandon those who remain loyal. Faithfulness may pass through danger, but it is not wasted there. Now, the story turns toward us, and this is where it becomes unavoidable, because the most important question is not whether God can shut the mouths of lions. The question is whether we would remain faithful if the lions were still roaring. If a decree threatened your comfort, your security, your future, would your faith remain visible? Would your habits stay the same? Would your values remain intact? Or would you quietly adjust them to survive? Daniel decided long before the decree who he would be. That is the secret most people miss. The decision that saved Daniel in the den was not made that night. It was made through years of quiet obedience when no one was watching. And that leaves us with the question that lingers long after the story ends. Not will God be faithful, but will we? Because the lion's den is not always about lions. Sometimes it is about pressure. Sometimes it's about fear. Sometimes it's about choosing who we are when obedience costs more than compromise. And in the end, the story of Daniel does not ask us to admire him. It asks us to decide, who will we be when faith becomes dangerous?